Well, hello, everyone. Thank you again for taking the time to join us on this midweek Hebrew word study. We are in Daniel chapter 9, and we're picking up on verse 6. I know I've spent a lot of time in the first part of this, but for some reason it is just is so impressing me. Um, the style, the words that Daniel is using here um, raised a lot of questions with me because obviously Daniel, as we spoke and referenced last week, caught the attention of God in his prayers, as mentioned in the book of Ezekiel, referenced there. And so, what can we learn from this? These verses are not put here just to take up space. And the sages recorded these as I believe God inspired them to do so for us to take something away, for us to learn. And so what we see here is a very long prayer. There are many restatements, there are many rephrasings. He repeats things. Um, you know, how does this match? It doesn't match how I pray. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to learn from this is, when I pray, I want it to come from my heart, of course, as we all do, and it's communication with God. That's how I perceive it. The question here is, how does God perceive our prayers? How does God want us to talk to Him? And I don't know that I'm ever going to truly learn this. To me, this is a lifelong learning experience, and it may be different for each and every person too. There may be different cultural things, different backgrounds. We have different personalities that affect how we speak and interact with others. And but yet, when we talk to God, how do we bring all those around and how does God receive our prayers? And so just want you to give some thought to that as I have been thinking about it as I look at these prayers for Daniel. We don't want our prayers to be meaningless speech. We don't want to just, we're not going to impress him by the big words and the amount of words that we use, but yet we want it to come from our heart and to express it properly. And as Daniel repeats these things over and over again, um, it makes me think. And so I guess with that, I'm just going to launch into the lesson. I hope some of you are giving the Bible Hub a try. I know it may be new for most of you, but it is such an easy program and it just it will start you out on a incredible life journey of studying God's Word in a way that you may never have thought of before. And to me, it just, as I do this and as I start clicking on these words and start looking at the meanings of these words, it definitely creates a hunger inside of me to do more. It causes you to want to participate more in this. So I encourage you to just, take the step, try this Bible program. Maybe toss me a note if you say, "Hey, I'm having trouble. I can help you," or if you get into it and say, "Hey, this is great. Thanks for sharing it with me." I'd love to hear that from you too. So we pick up in verse 6, and I'll read what's on the right side in the JPS version. And it says, Daniel's again lamenting, coming for the Lord, talking about all the things, the faults and the failures and the sins of the Jewish people. He said, "We haven't hearkened to your servants that spoke in your name, to our kings, our princes, our fathers, all the land, we've all failed. Unto thee, O Lord, belongeth righteousness, but unto us confusion of face." And so that's this, how can you not be taken back by this phraseology here of confusion of face? So we look at the Bible Hub on the left side, and I'll read the Hebrew for you just so you can get a sense of how it sounds, and it's good practice for me. So it's Lecha Adonai Hatzedakah, which is termed righteousness or tzedakah. You may be familiar with that term. Vilanu boshet panim hayot. So the boshet hapanim is this word that in Hebrew is translated here in English as confusion of face. In Bible Hub, it's boshet hapanim, which is shame of face. So again, just hovering over this number 1322, give a click on it, and up pops the little explanation, the lexicon of it, and it's much better than any dictionary we've ever been familiar with in English. It tells you where it's used in different translations. The King James translates this most time of ashamed or confusion, shameful. Um, and so it gives us an idea of, okay, we know what confusion of face is, relating that to ashamedness. I know what it means in my time frame, but what did it mean back then to them? And I'm intrigued by this reference in the explanation said that it has an implication specifically with an idol. Well, of course, that is nowhere in my translation of how I think of it when I'm ashamed or have confusion of face. So let's read on here. As we scroll down, we see how many times it's translated in different ways: humiliation, shame, shameful. Okay, we get that. But where is this reference to idol come in? So we look through the Brown Driver Breaks, which is one of the very first lexicons that was published, over 100 years ago. It is the base by which everybody kind of starts. Um, so the topical lexicon here, and this is a new um, portion that they've added in Bible Hub, but it's really been an encouragement to me. Reading it here, it says the term denotes shame, disgrace, humiliation, and here is where we start to get more of a biblical understanding, the inevitable consequence of idolatry. So, as Daniel is speaking here, he's not talking about being ashamed, oh, because I, embarrassed myself because I spilled water on the table or I dropped my food or, it's not that type of embarrassment that we see and experience today of maybe saying something wrong when you're speaking in front of someone, or you got a spot on your shirt that you didn't recognize until you get to work, that type of being ashamed. This has to do with um, dealing with idolatry, dealing with the sin that was prevalent in the land of Babylon, where they were being held captive, and the idolatry that was going on around about them and their participation in it of, you know, imagine the worst sin possible of betrayal of to a loved one, or I understand there are so many horrible things that can occur in relationships that after a transgression is committed, the type of shame that a person would feel. um, I think that's what Daniel's trying to get at here, of this complete betrayal to God, who they claim to be, a chosen people of, that here they're committing idolatry. They're breaking his covenant. Um, in the ancient lands, along with this idolatry, normally went very low moral actions of sinful sexuality, was deeply entwined, integrated into their type of idolatry. And again, I can't even begin to comprehend. It's probably one of those things that when you see it happening, you just have no words to describe what's going on. And I think as look at this explanation, I begin to feel a little bit of what, obviously Daniel was very moved. He was very broken by this, and he was very distraught over what God's people were doing in reference to the idolatry and breaking the covenant um, with uh, with with God. So as we scroll down here, it's interesting how the Bible Hub goes into just a little bit deeper and starts to bring in verses that reference this that I guess I never had thought of doing this as a word study and putting the connection between being ashamed or confusion of face um, with idolatry. And so here they start to reference from Jeremiah and from Isaiah when they were in Egypt. And it's just a very, very interesting um, comparison here that was very foreign to me right now, as it may be to you in this time that we're living in. And so here he makes the reference of the covenant community and sexual immorality, violence, injustice that brings the downfall of a nation, that brings shame upon a household. And again, we start to see comparisons as we think about our society today and the violence that's going on, the sexual immorality, injustice that's going on, that we look at things that are happening and we see decisions being made and movements in all directions that we just say, what are they thinking? How can this be? Confusion of face. We're just ashamed sometimes at our society in what's going on and but yet we feel helpless to know how to respond in any way. And may God lay it upon your heart if you are moved in such a way to um, be an agent for action, an agent for change, and to help those that are caught in some of these things. Um, so maybe with all of that, it certainly puts me in a mindset of, okay, how's Daniel feeling here? How are the people? What are they going through? Brings me a little closer to being able to relate to it. So as we go down here, verse 7, we've read uh, that the men of Judah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, all Israel that are near and all far off. Daniel's covering all of his bases here through all the counties and countries you have driven them. And all of this was because we have dealt treacherously with you. And then he gets down to verse 8, and he uses this term again, confusion of face, not only to the people, but to the princes, to the kings, because we have sinned against thee. And then I like how he turns it around in verse 9. And again, look at the layers, the different facets of this prayer of him repenting, of him confessing and then he gets to verse 9 and says, to the Lord um, belongs mercy. And this is such a neat word. It's harachamim. Racham is a level of compassion and mercy that is really only unpacked in a way of deep meaning through the Hebrew, because the word racham is based off the word that means in the mother's womb. And so this mercy that God is feeling is similar to how what a mother feels for her child when it's still in her womb, the child who hasn't done anything wrong yet, in a perfect state of development, and the love that the mother has for this child, um, even though the child hasn't done anything for them yet, hasn't, you know, made them happy because of any actions, just having that child and knowing that it's there causes a love. And that's where this word racham comes from. And Daniel's referencing this, that how the Lord's love towards us and towards his people here in Daniel was comparable to that type of racham love. And again, very, very beautiful. And that God is there regardless of what we have done, but yet he's still always calling us out to us. So verse 10, he says, neither have we hearkened to the voice of our God. We didn't walk in your laws, which he set before us by his servants and his prophets. Verse 11, Israel transgressed thy law. You see the repetition here. Daniel is going through every facet of what went wrong. He's so knowledgeable about the ways in which his people have turned against God. Much different than just saying, "Oh, we sinned. Oh, we blew it. Oh, I made a mistake." Daniel is being specific. He's being um, definitive. He is not wanting anything to be unspoken. He's we could say, searching his heart and finding every little thing inside to be able to confess it and make sure he has everything covered and there's nothing um, missed. And I find that just maybe that's a prompting. Maybe it encourages us to make sure that, we're diligent in our prayers and we're diligent in our confession and making sure that we are not doing this haphazardly and realizing the gravity of the situation and who we're talking to, and realizing that God knows our hearts regardless. He knows everything in it, I would say, better than maybe I even do in my own self, better than we do in our own self. And maybe some of this is an admonishment for us to say, God, search my heart and reveal what's going on inside of me, things that maybe I'm not even aware of, things that you see in me that I don't even see yet, but maybe other people do, and that I would really want to know about and be able to deal with that. And as we get to this verse 12, there's a word that I just want to bring out again, as Daniel is um, ascribing to God um, this judgment that comes against them. And this word in Hebrew, I'm sorry, in the JPS Hebrew Bible, uses the term, you brought upon us this great evil. We go to the Bible Hub and it softens it a little bit. And it says, who has judged us by bringing upon us this um, great disaster, this disaster. So here we have a challenge in the Hebrew, because Hebrew is a very small word-based language, and words have many different meanings upon them. And the word, especially here, it's called a raw word because it's the word for evil, or any of those things that are associated with it are spelled with a resh and an ayin, or a r and an a, if you were to transliterate it into English alphabet. And so this ra word is used throughout all the scriptures. And the trouble there is we can get maybe a wrong impression upon what is God bringing upon us. Is it evil, or is it, here as King James uses many different opportunities to translate, saying it's adversity, affliction, bad, calamity, soften enough or soften up with displeasure. It could be distress. It could be grief. It could be harm, heavy, hurtful, mischief, misery. It's all determined by the context, and that's what makes Hebrew kind of tricky, is that the words themselves are not just plug and play into English, and that one word gives you a 100% equivalent meaning in English or any other language. The context, what is happening here? And so what are the people going through? And this judgment upon them, it is obviously righteously applied, in meaning that there was justice in it. It was appropriate, meaning that the whatever the Israelites did, the justice or the retribution for it was of equal and appropriate equality, so that it's the proper judgment for the correct transgression, which is what our court systems seek to do. That when there's a transgression, the purpose of the jury is to go through and present the evidence, give it to the judge, and the judge is supposed to come back with the appropriate sentence, the appropriate justice, to try to equate what has happened. And of course, we can never be perfect with it down here on this earth. Once a transgression is committed, there's no way to undo it, and there's no way to rectify or replace. You can't undo the sorrow. You can't undo the hardship. If a life is lost, you can't bring that back. You can't repair things to the way they were, because there's feelings, there's memories, there are conditions to where lives are impacted forever, that can never be completely undone. And so all of this is just very challenging to get to process and challenging to see how God fits into that as He knows our hearts and He I believe with all my heart judges fairly, and that when things are brought, they are brought in a fair way, and that they are the equal and most perfect um, equivalent or recompense of what has happened. But that just brings up a whole another long discussion that is beyond the scope of this lesson today. So, with that very deep and heavy thought, I'm going to leave you on this verse, and we're going to come back and pick up with it on verse 13 next week. And pray God's blessing upon you. Hope you're enjoying these studies and look forward to seeing you again. Bye bye.